Bueno, qué sorpresa. Hola, hola, ¿cómo estás? Todo va bien aquí también. Gracias. Ah, Estoy pensando mucho en este momento. ¿Por qué? Este noche pasado vi una película que tiene un montón de detalles que me impactó mucho, 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 mucho. Sí, sí, me voy a hablar con todo el mundo esta película. Está bien, te quiero mucho también. Eh, Adiós. What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for Roma. Set in the early 1970s, predominantly in the Colonia Roma neighborhood of Mexico City, the plot of this drama basically follows the life of a live-in housekeeper, played by Yalitza Aparicio, to a middle-class family. Going into this movie, my expectations were sky high. This is easily one of my most anticipated movies of 2018 for a multitude of reasons, but mainly that of the filmmaker at the helm of this project. This movie is not just written and directed by Alfonso Cuarón, but it is also co-produced, co-edited, and photographed by him, and this is his first movie since 2013's Gravity, which I loved. Seeing that movie in IMAX 3D when it got re-released the January before the Oscar nominations were announced that year, which Cuarón actually ended up winning 2 for Gravity, Best Director and Best Editing. Yeah, such an immersive experience, and Cuarón has been one of my favorite filmmakers of recent memory, not just with Gravity, but also with Y Tu Mamá También. Him and his brother Carlos, who wrote the film with him, got an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. He was also the director behind Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the third film in that series. That film is often considered to be the best in the entire franchise, which for me, it's between that and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, but nevertheless, it is a phenomenal film in that series. Harry Potter is near and dear to my heart, in case you don't know. Cuarón has also made Children of Men, which I think is an absolute masterpiece, one of the best movies of the last decade. I just think that Cuarón is an amazing filmmaker, and I also take a lot of pride personally from him being the first, not just Mexican director to win the Best Director Oscar, but also for him being the first Hispanic/Latino period to win that. And for those of you that don't know, I myself am Mexican. Both of my parents are Mexican. I've said this time and time again that even though I look and sound like a white guy, I am indeed of Mexican descent. And with that sentiment in my mind, upon first hearing the concept for Roma, on top of Cuarón being involved with the project behind the camera, just it being about a slice of Mexican history within the early 1970s, about this live-in housekeeper, there was immediately a lot of relatability towards my culture, and it also immediately got me hooked to see what this movie would turn out to be, and also it being shot in black and white, and from seeing the first teaser and other first footage and huge buzz about this film. This movie, when it premiered on the festival circuit earlier this year, it's been getting a ton of unanimous praise. It won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival earlier this year, where it first premiered at. It's been getting a ton of awards nominations as of late. What was also interesting in first hearing details about this film was the fact that it would be streaming on Netflix. Now, this movie has gotten a pretty limited theatrical run, and this is mainly for it to qualify for next year's Oscars. But with all that being said, this movie just simply had me so incredibly excited to see it. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Yalitza Aparicio in the lead role of Cleo, the live-in housekeeper to this middle-class family in Mexico City. Now, with her in this kind of role, to give a bit of background in case you don't know about Aparicio, she is a non-actor. Like, this is her first ever movie she has been a part of, and she had no prior acting experience to being in Roma. Her background is actually that of a teacher, and I think that heavily benefited her performance in this film in playing Cleo, as this is probably one of the most natural performances I've ever seen in any movie, period. Cleo is a character that has a lot of nuance to her in terms of what she does on a day-to-day basis, which this movie does show throughout, in her caring for the house that this middle-class family lives in, cooking, cleaning, a bunch of those kind of duties. But we also get to see a bit of her own personal life, the relationship that she has with her boyfriend, also just what she is going through after a specific moment occurs in the film. All of this just made me so absorbed in watching Aparicio play Cleo. And with all of what she goes through across this movie, I really got to not just sympathize and empathize with her, but also really feel like I am watching someone go through their day-to-day life as if it could really happen. It feels tremendously tangible, to say the least. And I've got to say, as of now, Aparicio has probably delivered my favorite film performance I've seen in all of 2018. The rest of the cast in this movie, I think, also do some fantastic work. I mean, I'm not mentioning them as much as Aparicio as Cleo, mainly because Cleo truly is the center of this film, and she is virtually in almost every scene. So that is why I am emphasizing greatly how much Aparicio made this movie what it is, as in simple terms, she is the heart of Roma. Speaking of Roma's heart, if Aparicio is the heart of Roma on camera, behind the camera, this movie is Alfonso Cuarón's heart. As I've mentioned earlier, he didn't just write and direct this thing, but he also co-produced, co-edited, and photographed this movie himself. So this is his passion project through and through. And going into the writing of this film, one could say that at this movie's pure simplicity, there really isn't that much in the way of story aside from Cleo's day-to-day activities. This also goes in the way of dialogue, as the majority of this movie is comprised of talking scenes, if you would. Just the interactions with Cleo, the rest of the family she works for, her boyfriend, and various other characters that do show up here and there that she has tete-a-tetes with. And this movie is the first foreign language film that I've ever reviewed here on my channel. The majority of this movie is spoken in Spanish. There are a smattering of moments where English is heard in this movie, and I actually watched this film with subtitles on, and even though I can understand Spanish pretty well, it wasn't just Spanish that was spoken, it's also Mixtec. It's this indigenous language that is spoken in Mexico. There are actually hundreds of different dialects spoken in Mexico aside from Spanish. A lot of the Mixtec dialogue is spoken within the interactions between Cleo and Adela. She's another maid who works for the same middle-class family that Cleo works for, and both of these characters, Cleo and Adela, they're indigenous Mexicans, and that's significant for this movie and in real life, as like here in the United States where I live, the darker your skin complexion is, the more infringed upon you are. And within Roma, there are some glimpses of that commentary shown in scenes of this film between Cleo and the wife of this family she works for. The wife calls her Mensa, or Spanish for silly, and even though throughout the film you do see that this family does genuinely care for her and they have a lot of appreciation for what she does, taking care of the 4 children and whatnot, there is some of that displayed in the time that this movie is taking place and also the specific area of Mexico that the film is set in. So with that, going into the rest of the writing, that may sound boring to some people who do end up watching this movie, but it's more than just the day-to-day activities that Cleo does in this film. There are specific key moments that occur across this movie's running time that do have an impact on Cleo as a character, but also in the overall aesthetic that this movie carries. So much of this movie is relied on what is done visually on top of what is written by Cuarón, that going into the technical merits of this movie, wow. Like I mentioned before, this movie is shot in black and white, and I think this is effective on 2 big reasons in having this choice be done. One, to have our eyes be drawn to specific areas of the frame, and 2, having this movie feel very vintage, and also in that we are viewing a bygone era and it really feeling like a movie that is timeless, no matter if it's taking place in the 1970s. Like I've also mentioned before too, Cuarón personally shot this movie. He did the cinematography for this film, and the camera work is just silky smooth with a lot of the sequences of this film. Whether they are just stagnant and seeing daily life happening for Cleo and these other characters in the film, to just the tracking shots in seeing the bustling street life of this neighborhood in Mexico City, Roma. Again, that's the reason this movie is called Roma. Now that I'm thinking about this more and more and recreating the visuals in my head, I would say that this is the most beautiful film I've seen all year. The production design of this film has to be given a big mention as well, as the various locations that the movie takes us to not only look accurate to the time period. Again, this movie is set in the early 1970s, over the course of about a year, 1970 to 1971, but they contribute to the timelessness I feel this movie has, in that this could be just about any city. The scale is just backed up all the more with the framing and shooting of this movie, from the actual house that Cleo works in, this really extravagant movie theater that is shown off at one point in the film. It looks huge, like wow. And also this open area where a group of people, who I'll mention more of later, are training with martial arts. Wow. The costume design, the clothes shown off in this film look accurate to the time period as well. Just the way scenes are transitioned from one another. Again, Cuarón co-edited this film, and I think that the scenes never dragged for too long, and they showed enough of what is needed in their specific moments to be shown off. The music of this film, I have to mention as well, as there is none. Specifically, there is no original score. The only music that we hear across the running time of this movie, which, by the way, this movie at 2 hours and 15 minutes, I really thought there was a lot packed into the way this movie ran. But going back to the music, the only music that we hear in this film is either heard being played on the radio in the house that Cleo works for, or even in cars, and also being played physically by people in this film, like this marching band that always treks across the street where the middle-class family in Cleo live. It added on to just this movie really feeling like you are watching someone's life play out right in front of you. The first song that I heard being played in this movie was, oh my god, Leo Dan's Te He Prometido. And as soon as I heard that, I knew this movie was going to be something for sure. And then other songs that I recognized that were popular at the time and were used in this movie ranged from Juan Gabriel's No Tengo Dinero and Jose Jose's Espera un poco. This truly is a singular vision from a filmmaker who has made something that really feels so personal. Cuarón has said that this is a tribute to the women in his life who have raised him. In fact, the movie is semi-autobiographical in that regard. He has mentioned that he did have a maid living with him, and this was pretty common in real life in this part of the world, and I'm pretty sure this is the case for other countries around the globe, to where there are people who do work for families as servants, maids, or whatever, that are technically a part of the family themselves for how much they do contribute to the working and running of their specific households. The majority of this review so far has just been me going on about how gorgeous this movie is. But I haven't really gone that much into how much this movie means to me. And I also haven't even gone to the themes of this film. As thinking about the movie more and more, and in some notable moments as I was watching them, wow, this movie's deep. I really can't explain it any other way than that. It is deep, dense, with just how wholesome this movie is. It is heartily filled in its 2-hour and 15-minute running time with so much that can be taken away. And I think this is going to specifically hit those in the Mexican community who have either lived through this or really have been so engrossed with this culture all throughout their lives. And for me, being of Mexican heritage again, what I saw and heard just had me so enveloped with being taken away to a different era and a different part of the world where my family came from. It was an otherworldly experience. I watched this movie with my dad last night, and even though we both had our earphones in all throughout watching this movie and being so suckered into what this movie showed, I could tell that between us, there was a lot that really hit us for various different reasons. But after the film, I had a pretty enlightening conversation with him and what he mainly took away from the film, and also explaining to me a bit of history with what was shown in the film, such as this one really standout moment where this student protest is happening and a bunch of turmoil is going on, and he explained that these group of people called the porros, or hired mercenaries by the government, were responsible for taking out a bunch of people within there, and it going into just the overall, the government imprint on Mexico at this time in history. He lived through a bit of this in his early life. He was born in the early 1960s, so in the early 1970s, he was, growing up. That's what a lot of this movie felt like to him, and what I surmised from what he was talking about to me. I don't even really know how to fathom the rest of what I just viewed last night. I'm definitely gonna have to revisit this movie really soon to take in a lot more of what I saw. Also to bask in more of the glory of what visually was done with this film. Like, one of my favorite moments of this film has to do with fire in the background and singing in the foreground. That's all I'm going to say with that. And two specific moments of this film I really got choked up in. And, you know, my soul was hit so hard at those specific moments of the film that really it was adding on to the otherworldly experience I was having with watching Roma. There's just a lot here that is taken in. Like, also this one sequence at the beach, without giving it away, I have no freaking clue how that was shot. Not just with it being a long take, but also the choreography, the rest of the choreography and other scenes of this film, and the plotting. I don't know how else to describe this movie, really. I cannot think of any other movie that I've seen this year that has touched me on such an elevated level that I think that this is probably the greatest achievement in all of film this year. And I can so see why many people have been praising this movie. And at this point, this is not even a review. This is just me therapeutically displaying how much I adore this film. I mean, me talking in front of all of you watching this movie, and I give you tremendous praise on you for sticking with me throughout this video, because I'm just a guy talking ad nauseum and ad infinitum about a movie that has really gotten to me. But how emotionally resonating this movie is cannot be described just from me. If last year's Coco did a lot to bring Mexican culture to the mainstream, I think Roma does that in spades. Coco was my favorite animated movie of last year, 2017, and straight up one of my favorite movies of 2017, period. And you already know where I'm going with this. If it hasn't been already clear, Roma is not just the greatest movie I've seen all year, it's now my favorite movie of 2018. There have been other movies this year that have hit me hard, such as Won't You Be My Neighbor, as I've mentioned time and time again this year after I first saw it in theaters. This is my favorite documentary of the year, and for a good chunk of 2018, it was my favorite film of 2018. And even recently, I saw The Favorite by Yorgos Lanthimos, and that movie I adore as well. With this movie streaming on Netflix, it goes without saying that you should see this movie immediately. Right now. And I think it's also a gift that this movie is streaming on Netflix for all the world to be able to see, to be able to veer into a different culture in a bygone era. To you, Alfonso Cuarón, and all of the other people that made this movie possible, thank you. My biggest of thank yous for representing our Mexican culture with such delicate care, also using it to show what the art form of film is meant to be seen for. My humblest of gratitudes to you all in making Roma possible. Roma, once again, is my absolute favorite movie of 2018. I cannot recommend it more highly enough. My final verdict for Roma is 5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Roma. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.